is Father Vogel. We continue our series on St. Francis de Sales, Introduction to the Devout Life. We are still in part 3, looking at the different virtues. And the virtue that we're looking at in this video, which is chapter 25, is proper dress. How are we to dress in a proper manner? So, St. Francis says that we ought to be dressed in proper clothes, adorning ourselves with modesty and sobriety. He refers to something from Isaiah chapter 52, where he says external cleanliness reflects to some extent our interior uprightness. And so God, in that passage from Isaiah, demands even bodily cleanliness for those who are approaching his altars, for the priests that we find in the Old Testament. So the same thing for us is that there's going to be, depending upon the situation, a dress that is proper to us, that we should present ourselves in a proper, clean fashion. So he says that the style of clothes depends upon several circumstances such as time, age, rank, company, and occasions. So the proper way that we ought to dress is going to be dependent upon different factors like that. Obviously, he's not going to go into certain specifics that he might give in this chapter. I won't go into, since he's writing, in the 1500s. But the general principles apply to any time. So he says, for example, that we ought to dress better on feast days in proportion to the importance of the day celebrated. So if we're on a Sunday or a feast day of the church, that we can dress accordingly to kind of show forth the greater importance of that day. He also says, mentioning certain specific occasions, he said at marriage people put on wedding garments, at funerals mourning. In the company of princes we put on richer garments, which we put off when we are at home. So there's a certain proper attire that we should wear for weddings, as well as clothing that represents mourning with the family at funerals. He says in the company of princes we put on a higher level, richer garments. And we do that when we're going to be, at some kind of like a banquet or around, some important person. Of course, the most important prince, in a sense, that we have is our King himself, Jesus. And so that's why we want to dress at a higher level when we come to Mass, to be the finest for being in the presence of the King of the universe. He speaks too about dressing to gain attention. So this would be the case in which especially a woman or a man may be dressing to try to gain certain attentions and be attractive to a member of the opposite sex. And he says that you can do that as long as it's suitable to one's state in life, whether one is single or married. So somebody who is single, and they can dress in a way in which that would be attractive to trying to find a spouse. Those that are married can dress, in a way according to which their spouse appreciates. But he warns against doing it that doesn't match with your state in life. So, for example, if someone is married, you shouldn't dress in such a way as to purposely try to draw the attraction of members of the opposite sex in a way that wouldn't be appropriate, because you've already made your commitment within marriage, and you don't want to be attracting others in a way that isn't proper to your state in life at this moment. He says also, let there be nothing untidy or disorderly about you. It is a contempt of those with whom we live to go among them in displeasing attire. So yes, it's true is that if you go around and you're dressed very beggarly or disheveled, that often people can judge a person based on their clothing, which we shouldn't do that, but I mean, that's one's natural tendency. If you're able to dress well, even if you can't afford, the best of clothing, to be very presentable and not look as though you are the poorest of the poor. If you can do that, then people will, you can avoid more easily that kind of unfortunate way that people can shun those who aren't seen to be dressed well. But he says we want to, in all of this talk of the way that we dress, he says, take heed well against affections, vanities, curiosities, and frivolity. As much as possible, keep always on the side of simplicity and modesty. So we want to be careful that we don't become vain in the way that we dress, or spend so much time on our looks that it becomes, all time consuming. We're going over the top and trying to make ourselves appear well, and that becomes one of the most important things. That kind of vanity is not good, but instead to have a kind of simplicity and modesty about the way we dress. So dress clean and well, but also simply, modestly, so that we really, are trying to show forth and focus more on, what's our interior beauty, rather than trying to focus just simply on external looks. God bless.